Welcome to the Just Ask podcast. My name is Becky Bridgham.
And I'm Jim Bridgham.
And we decided to create a podcast so we would answer the questions of our friends and listeners. And you can pretty much ask us anything and we will do our best to answer. So today's question is, I am new to meditation. Do you have any tips on getting started?
Oh, totally. So I'm going to take this one a little bit more probably than Becky because I used to teach meditation for a very long time. And I remember the first time I went for meditation training, like I'd learned on my own. I showed up to my coach training program years and years ago, and they did meditation. And the person running it was from New Jersey, had a very, very thick New Jersey accent. And she just read a script. And I thought, this is so hokey. Like, this is just so hippie, just not my jam. And I recall having like pain in my shoulder, something that I'd heard or something along the way. And so I'm playing along with this meditation. And this, again, thick New Jersey accent, I won't even pretend to do, reading this super fast, like meditation. And I'm sitting there and I'm closing and I'm focusing my breath. And at the end, I realized that the pain in my shoulder completely went away. Like it was gone. And I like kind of paying attention to it. I noticed it because it had been bothering me so much. And throughout the day, it never returned. So I talked to her after and I said, hey, that meditation really impacted me differently. Like the pain in my shoulder evaporated. And she said, oh yeah, that happens all the time with meditation. And that was it. And I said, okay, I guess it does. Like I had no idea. I also didn't know who Brene Brown is when I went to this training. So anyway, like I didn't know a lot of things that are kind of common in the coach world. So afterwards, I started studying meditation and practicing every day. I'd do a 20 to 30 minute meditation in the morning, which now I've kind of funneled down a little bit to about 10 minutes. But at the time I was doing 30 minutes and it made such a difference. So I wanted to study it. Like, why does this work so much where you're sitting still and you're having these kind of really interesting experiences just by really focusing on your breath? So my organization sent me to Google to do training. And if you don't know this, Google credits a lot of its success to an internal program called Search Inside Yourself. There's a book by the title, highly recommend it. It's spectacular. But Search Inside Yourself, Google's mindfulness program, was used voluntarily by their employees. It's not specifically ascribed to any religion or faith. It's just a secular form of meditation. So anyway, I go to this training and I'm like, the pictures on the walls are amazing. Like everybody and their brother have been there, from the Dalai Lama, Bill Clinton, President Obama. All the people have done this kind of mindfulness training. So anyway, I'm in it and I have my notebook open. I'm like, oh, this has got to be super complicated and like theologically dense. So the guy gets up and he goes, okay, well, the first step is to focus on your breath. Got it, check. So I'm like writing down focus on your breath. Because so you close your eyes, focus on your breath. The second step is get distracted. Okay, so like, all right, get distracted. And if you've ever tried meditation, you're going to get distracted. You might make it 5 seconds and thoughts come in your brain. So what's the third step of 4, by the way? Third step, acknowledge the distraction. So what happens in acknowledge the distraction? Let's say you're thinking about work or kids or family or the dishes. You'll just say, dishes, work. You can say it out loud, or you can say it in your quiet heart or in your mind and just say, like, I'm thinking about work. You acknowledge the thought. And what this is like is if you've ever laid outside as a kid on the grass and watched clouds, or you've noticed clouds and what the shape of them look like, you might say, oh, it looks like a spaceship, dinosaur, or whatever. That's just acknowledging the same thought in your mind. So just like you'd acknowledge the cloud and what it looks like, you acknowledge the thought coming through your mind, because we can't clear our mind of thoughts. You just can't. That thought process of like an empty mind, it's not possible. It just is not. Something's going to come in. Maybe some master meditator that's meditating 10, 20 hours a day, which I don't even know how to do that, is hitting that point, but most people can't. So in your distraction, you acknowledge it. So again, so far the 3 steps are focus on your breath, get distracted, acknowledge the distraction. So what is the mythical final step of their process? Return to your breath. That's the final step. Just go back to your breath. So the cycle is breathe, get distracted, acknowledge it, return to breath. Like literally you're just constantly going back to your breath. So what is the benefit of meditation? Increased focus, mental clarity, presence with your family. It's shown academic improvement. It's shown health improvement in so many factors. It's crazy. And that's just a few. These studies too aren't coming out of like whiz-bang hippie universities or Boulder. They're coming out of MIT. In fact, most of the mindfulness research that's out there and so many books about mindfulness have come from MIT, professors, Harvard professors, and most of them are secular in nature, so they will fit directly into your spiritual context. Now, I want to be clear, because this is kind of in the spiritual lane, that this is totally different from prayer. I've had tons of people say, oh, well, I pray. Prayer is not meditation. And I also want to be clear that meditation is mentioned throughout the Bible, because when I talk about meditation, I inevitably get a nasty email, nasty message like, oh my gosh, you're off the deep end. No, meditation is throughout Scripture, all Scripture, and it's something that's done by being quiet, focusing on your breath. In fact, the word breath in both the Hebrew Scriptures, the Old Testament, and the Greek Scriptures, the New Testament, is the word pneuma in Greek, which is the New Testament, or ruach in Hebrew, which means breath or spirit. So when you focus on the breath, you're actually acknowledging the Spirit's presence in your life. So that's why it can be spiritual, but you don't need to have a spiritual presence in your life. In fact, some great books on meditation are written by secular or atheistic authors. This is truly a life skill that goes across all religions, faiths, and even non-faith. So this isn't something you need to do with, your rosary, your prayer book, or Bible. Really, this is just something you should be doing every day. And I hate to say should, because I don't think we should force anyone to do anything. But I'll tell you, even 1 minute of meditation, 1 minute, 60 seconds, will have marked benefits if you can do it over 3 to 4 weeks permanently. Last point on this before I let Becky chime in is Arnold Schwarzenegger, who has an amazing meditation approach, is pretty interesting. Tons of interviews about this too. He said that what helped him get to that level of strength and performance at his peak was meditation. And he spent 1 year meditating really consistently. And he said that 1 year had benefits for the rest of his life. But how he did it, so interesting, it's worth sharing. Arnold giving his interview using his dialect, which again, I won't do. I should be doing, I guess, New Jersey and Arnold accents. But Arnold said, when I would close my eyes and go into my muscle and see it flex as I was doing the things like he would, and he's talking about it, and I'm listening to him describe his meditative process, and I'm like almost felt like I was there with him. So when you're meditating, whether it's a visualization or just your breath, try to really be present. And again, I'm not talking forever, and if you fall asleep, it's okay, but just really it comes to focus on your breath, get distracted, acknowledge the distraction, come back to your breath.
And I think one of the things that Jim mentioned, that this doesn't have to be weird. It doesn't have to take a long time. It doesn't have to be over the top spiritual. It doesn't have to be over the top complicated. And, we've talked a lot about habits before, that I would say if you can find a way to make this a habit in your life, it will benefit you. I was talking to a friend yesterday and we were talking about some other things, and we're in the middle of quarantine and coronavirus and all that craziness. And she said, you know what? I got up yesterday. I was feeling totally out of sync, and she said I just took a couple minutes to sit and meditate, and she said it literally changed my mindset for the rest of the day. And so what Jim was saying is that it seems too easy, it seems too good to be true, but give it a go, give it a try, maybe commit to a week or 30 days. And one of the things that I like to share is that prayer is you talking to your higher power, but meditation, I really feel like, is listening. And so I'm a huge proponent of silence and stillness, because we live in such a busy world. And so when you can put meditation in your morning routine, maybe it's even just with your coffee, don't pick up the phone. Don't put on the radio. Don't put on the news and just sit in silence. It doesn't always have to be this Zen experience. It could be driving in your car. I love to drive in my car in silence, because you're really not thinking. I mean, you're driving, but your subconscious is kind of taken over, just giving your brain space. In the shower, while your kids are playing in the backyard, just finding time to give your brain that mental space is a great start. But then finding a specific time where you can be in silence and stillness with your eyes closed. I know when I first started meditation, most people will say, well, my brain is too busy. I can't do it. And remember when I went through yoga training, we got trained in meditation, because a lot of classes will have a little bit of quiet time in the beginning and then a shavasana at the end of the class, which is really just silence and stillness. And some of the other students were like, well, I can't meditate, because our brains have been on overdrive for decades of our life. But what you find is it's a skill, like Jim said. You learn how to do it, and the more you do it, the easier it gets and the more amazing it gets, because you find your brain needs a break. and we don't often give it enough of a break. And so finding that time to just be in complete silence and stillness might, like Jim said, those distractions at the beginning might not be like a cloud. It might be like a tornado coming through or a hurricane. But over time, the more you give your brain that space, they slow down. And then you find that you really do have this clarity. And I find, me personally, I like to meditate in the morning, but then I have my journal near me, because when I sit, I find that those distractions and those thoughts are when I have some of my best ideas, when someone will pop into my brain that I want to call that day, where I really feel like at peace, where I feel like I'm being refilled. And it feels weird to be refilled with silence, because we have this mindset of, I need to be filled with stuff, with information, with doing, with praise, with, likes and shares and all those things, but you really will find that you're probably most filled to overflowing with nothing in your brain, right? So
now, I do want to add one more tip for people who are getting started. I think Becky's principles are so awesome. Let's say you're really having a hard time, or if you have some mental health challenges, and you really want to do this, but maybe your brain's working too fast, and even focusing your breath is too hard. I'd suggest find a word, phrase, or thing to focus on. I'm going to provide some examples. Let's say it's like faith, hope, or love, and you just think faith or love. And if you can't focus on your breath and your brain's running a million miles an hour, and I've had a ton of clients like this, just when it comes up, just say love or hope or faith, whatever word it is for you. It could be the name of a spiritual figure. It could be whatever. Just find something that works. So that could be a word. And I know many people who do this, they'll read their Bibles in the morning and a word or phrase or scripture verse comes out to them, and they will just reflect on that over and over again. And they don't vary from it. So this is a type of contemplation that you do as a form of meditation. The second one is this. Let's say neither of those work, your breath doesn't work, the word, then find a picture, or even better, something in nature to focus on. So we have a great porch in our backyard here. We hang out there pretty much all day long when we can. Stare at maybe a blade of grass, a tree, something that's kind of there but moving in the wind or just still, and just focus on it. And when thoughts come in, just return to that point of focus. Whether, again, it's a picture, object, or thing. Again, if it's alive, it seems to be better for most people, especially in the active outdoors. Now, I know not most of us don't have that opportunity to be outside early in the morning or afternoon or consistently, but you do have a window somewhere in most contexts. So find some place that you can kind of stare out the window and just be for a minute, stare at some clouds. Those things, again, sound like time wasters. You might actually think like, oh man, that's procrastination. That seems to be the opposite of what both you and Becky do. But the reality is those 10, 15 minutes of time will maximize the rest of your day. What we're trying to say is if you want to reach that level of productivity, health, and effectiveness, you need to take this time to really sharpen the saw. Now, that principle was brought up by Stephen Covey in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he said that, if you really want to cut down a tree, and you have 8 hours to do so, you'd spend the first 7 hours sharpening your saw. And I think that actually came from Abraham Lincoln. But you want to sharpen who you are. And this restores and resharpens your thought processes. So this isn't just some, again, voodoo witch magic that might help you. In fact, I guarantee if you've ever been in a counselor or coach's office, at some point they've recommended meditation. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever been in many, not all churches, but many churches or spiritual locations or training programs, they're going to mention this. This is so incredibly effective. I would consider this one of the master skills to be effective. So in your life, you want that great marriage, you want that great relationship with your kids, you want to be great personally, or even you just want more energy in your day, or frankly, to sleep better, This is it. So I just highly recommend, if nothing else, take this to heart and give it a go.
I love it. I think it's super important. And the world's highest performers are all meditators. Just Google it and you will find that this has been demonstrated in practice to really up-level your life.
Well, we want to thank you for listening today. If you want to submit some questions, you can go to
thejustaskpodcast.com.
And we just thank you so much for spending a few minutes of your day with us. And again, send us some questions. We could definitely use some more.
Thanks for listening.